The headlines scream from every screen, their urgency impossible to ignore. Across living rooms, cafes, and bustling train stations, the news flashes in bold, alarming fonts, demanding attention from millions. Every newspaper stand across the continent is a stage for anxiety, as people snatch up papers, searching for answers in the chaos. The stories they read are not just distant events, they are the pulse of daily life, shaping conversations and fueling uncertainty. Brussels in deadlock as budget battle rages. The heart of the European project is gridlocked, with leaders locked in tense negotiations, their decisions poised to affect millions. Far-right surges in key European elections. The political landscape is shifting, as new voices rise and old certainties crumble, leaving voters divided and governments on edge. Energy crisis looms. Will Europe freeze this winter? As temperatures drop, so does the sense of security, with families wondering if they'll have enough heat to make it through the cold months ahead. These are not just words, they are warning shots, echoing through city streets and rural villages alike, signaling that the challenges ahead are real and immediate. For the European Union, a bloc of 27 nations, this is a moment of truth, a test of unity, resilience, and shared purpose. The air is thick with tension, a sense of urgency that you can almost touch. People hurry through the streets, their faces etched with worry, their conversations hushed and hurried. Can this grand experiment in unity survive the powerful forces pulling it apart? The debates are fierce, the stakes higher than ever before. This isn't a single crisis, it's a convergence of challenges, each amplifying the next, creating a sense of instability that is felt in every corner of the continent. It's a storm formed from many different fronts colliding at once: economic, political, social, and even environmental. From the north, economic anxieties ripple through financial districts as markets fluctuate and businesses brace for uncertainty. From the south, debt and unemployment cast long shadows, with communities struggling to recover from years of hardship. From the east, the shadow of war looms ever closer as border tensions and conflict threaten to spill over, and from the west, political fractures deepen, with protests in the streets and parliaments divided over the path forward. This is the story we're covering tonight on Global Pulse, a story that is still unfolding, with no clear end in sight. It's about the 450 million people whose lives hang in the balance, each one hoping for stability, security, and a brighter future. The unity that was once Europe's greatest strength now seems fragile, tested by forces both within and beyond its borders. Leaders huddle in late-night summits in Brussels, their faces etched with concern and fatigue, searching for solutions as the world watches. Every decision sends ripples across the entire bloc and indeed across the globe, influencing economies, alliances, and the daily lives of millions. Is the Union strong enough to weather this perfect storm? Or will the cracks widen until they can no longer be mended? Or are we witnessing the beginning of its end, a turning point in history, where the future of Europe hangs in the balance and the world holds its breath? To truly understand the crisis facing Europe today, we must first journey back to the ashes of yesterday. The devastation left by World War II was unlike anything the continent had ever seen. Cities were reduced to rubble, families torn apart, and entire nations left grappling with loss and uncertainty. The scars of war ran deep, not just in the landscape but in the hearts and minds of millions. The European Union was not born in a boardroom, nor was it the product of a single grand vision. Instead, it emerged from the collective desperation and hope of a continent determined to never repeat the horrors of the past. It was born from the rubble of World War II as ordinary people cleared debris and tried to rebuild their shattered lives. The need for peace was urgent and deeply personal. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and other war-torn nations gathered and asked themselves a simple but profound question: how do we stop this from ever happening again? How do we ensure that our children and grandchildren never have to witness such destruction? Their answer was bold. They decided to tie their countries together so closely, economically, politically, and socially, that another war would become not just unlikely, but unthinkable. Cooperation, not conflict, would be the new foundation. The first step on this journey was the creation of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951. This was more than just an economic agreement. It was a symbol of trust between former enemies. By placing the very materials needed for war, coal and steel, under a shared authority, they made it nearly impossible for any one nation to secretly rearm against the others. It was a radical experiment in shared sovereignty. This small seed of cooperation, planted in the ruins of war, slowly grew over the decades. As trust deepened, so did the ambition for a united Europe. The coal and steel community evolved into the European Economic Community, and eventually, into the European Union we know today, a union of nations striving for peace, prosperity, and unity. Over time, the EU expanded, welcoming new members from across the continent, including nations once trapped behind the Iron Curtain. Each new member brought fresh hopes and new challenges. The EU created the world's largest single market, allowing goods, people, and ideas to flow freely. It even launched a single currency, the euro, symbolizing a new era of economic unity. But as the union grew larger and more complex, strains began to show. The dream of unity was tested by disagreements, economic crises, and political divisions. The vision of an ever-closer union started to clash with deep-rooted national identities. Many citizens felt torn between their European aspirations and their local traditions and loyalties. The foundation of the EU was strong, built on the shared trauma of war and the hope for peace. But as new challenges emerged, cracks began to appear, testing the strength and resilience of the European dream. Then came the earthquake. It was not a tremor felt in the ground, but a seismic shift in the political landscape of Europe. The world watched as the United Kingdom stood on the brink of a decision that would reverberate far beyond its shores. On June 23, 2016, millions of British citizens went to the polls to answer a simple yet profound question. Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union, or leave? By a narrow margin, the country voted to leave the EU, setting in motion a chain of events that would reshape the continent. The result, soon known as Brexit, sent shockwaves across Europe and the world. Markets tumbled, politicians scrambled, and uncertainty gripped both the UK and its neighbors. The decision was felt not just in London or Brussels, but in capitals and communities across the globe. Brexit was fueled by a complex mix of anxieties, concerns over rising immigration, a desire to reclaim national sovereignty, and frustration with decisions made by unelected officials in Brussels. For many, it was about taking back control. For others, it was a leap into the unknown. But Brexit was more than just a political divorce. It was a symptom of deeper discontent simmering beneath the surface. It revealed divisions not only between politicians but within families, communities, and generations. The vote exposed a chasm between those who had prospered from the EU's open borders and global connections, and those who felt left behind or threatened by rapid change. It was a clash of hopes and fears, of identity and belonging. For the European Union, Brexit marked a moment of profound crisis. Leaders gathered in Brussels, grappling with the reality that one of their largest and most influential members was walking away. The departure of a major power shattered the myth of the EU's inevitable expansion and unity. Suddenly, the future of the Union seemed uncertain, and the possibility of further exits loomed. The process of leaving was long, messy, and painful. Political leaders struggled to find consensus, and the nation endured years of debate, negotiation, and division. For the remaining member states, Brexit served as a terrifying wake-up call. It forced them to confront the fragility of the European project and the depth of Eurosceptic sentiment within their own borders. Across the continent, governments and citizens alike were compelled to examine their own vulnerabilities, questioning the future of integration and the meaning of European identity. Brexit has changed the balance of power within the EU, elevating the roles of countries like France and Germany, and prompting new debates about the direction and purpose of the Union. It stands as a stark reminder that the European Union, once seen as an unstoppable force, is not permanent. Its future will depend on how it responds to the challenges and lessons of Brexit. The European Union may have a single market, but it is far from a single economy. Deep economic divisions run through the continent like fault lines. The most famous is the North-South divide. In the north, powerhouse economies like Germany and the Netherlands are known for fiscal discipline. In the south, countries like Greece and Italy struggle with high debt and unemployment. The Eurozone debt crisis required massive bailouts, causing resentment. There's also the East-West split. Eastern members like Poland and Hungary have grown economically but still face challenges. They feel the rules benefit older, wealthier Western nations. This economic divide is complicated by political differences. The result is a complex map where different regions have very different priorities. In 2015, the EU faced a massive influx of refugees and migrants. Over 1 million people, many fleeing war, arrived on Europe's shores. The crisis tested the EU's humanitarian values and internal solidarity. Initially there was compassion, but the mood changed as numbers grew. Frontline states like Greece and Italy felt abandoned. A plan to distribute asylum seekers fairly was met with resistance. This refusal to share the burden created immense bitterness. The migration crisis became a weapon for nationalist parties. Though numbers have fallen, migration remains a divisive issue. It continues to pull the Union apart. On February 24, 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a brutal awakening. The EU, focused on soft power, faced a security crisis on its border. In a display of unity, the EU responded with speed and strength. They imposed massive sanctions on Russia and financed weapons for Ukraine. The war exposed Europe's reliance on Russian energy. Prices skyrocketed, threatening economies and citizens. The crisis forced a scramble for alternative energy sources. Security and defense are now top priorities. The conflict shifted the EU's center of gravity eastward. The war has forced the EU to rethink its strategy. While the EU projects unity, nationalism and Euroscepticism rise. Political leaders gain support by challenging the EU's authority. They argue the EU infringes on national sovereignty and identity. In Hungary and Poland, nationalist governments clash with the EU. The EU has responded by withholding funding, leading to standoffs. This trend goes beyond Eastern Europe, affecting Italy, France, and Sweden. Nationalist parties tap into public anxiety over immigration and insecurity. This rise poses a challenge to the EU's shared sovereignty model. It creates a union constantly at war with itself. The crises facing the EU have global consequences. A strong EU acts as a stabilizing force. A weak one creates a power vacuum. Economically, the stakes are enormous. A recession in Europe would drag down the global economy. The euro's stability is at risk, affecting global markets. Geopolitically, a fractured Europe weakens the Western alliance. Russia and China would benefit from a distracted Europe. The EU's crisis is a crisis for international cooperation. As the EU stands at a crossroads, its future is uncertain. Three scenarios could unfold. The first is fragmentation, where nationalism proves too strong. The Union unravels, becoming a hollow shell. The second is deeper integration, where crises catalyze change. Leaders band together, creating a federal superstate. The third is a multi-speed Europe, with different tiers of membership. Each future presents promises and perils. Fragmentation could lead to rivalries of the past. Deeper integration could provoke backlash. The multi-speed option offers compromise but risks division. The choice will shape the continent's future.